Hi everyone, this is Citlalli. I am the producer and editor of Nicantlaka Women Warriors and Nicantlaka University. And I want to start a review of some of the books, the most important books that I've come across in either undergrad or grad school. And I wanted to do this before the next semester began because third semester is coming up. So to begin this series of book reviews, I want to start off with Ned Blackhawk's Violence Over the Land, Indians and Empires in the Early American West. Now, to let you know, it's very few in between Nicantlaka historians. So, props to brother Ned Blackhawk. He does a great job in presenting and really complicating the idea of violence. According to him, he's like, violence has been downplayed. Violence has not really been explored in the way that it was used against Indigenous people and in the way it really gave way to much more of the policies that came out of the colonization of Indigenous people. Now, to let you know more about Ned Blackhawk, he received his bachelor's from UCLA in 1990, his master's, in UCLA from 1994. He went on to get his PhD from the University of Washington. And from 2006 through current, he is a professor of history and American studies at Yale University. So he's come a long way. He continues to present, to research, to really try to de-homogenize Indigenous experiences. And his book, Violence Over the Land, it's a great, I would say, kind of perspective of violence. And he really is trying to make us see and complicate the idea of violence. Now, if you don't mind, I will read through some of the chapter titles just so you can kind of get an idea of what his research was based on. And it begins, and I'm going to go one through, it's 7-chapter book. It is 267 pages. As you can see, I went in on this book. So to begin the chapters, let you know, Spanish-Ute relations, the making of the New Mexican-Ute border, the enduring Spanish-Ute alliance, crisis in New Mexican borderlands, Great Basin Indians in the era of Lewis and Clark, Colorado Utes and the traumatic storms of expansion, Utah's Indians and the crisis of Mormon settlement, and the epilogue. So I really have to say that I was really shocked at how well this is written. Shocked because he actually confronts white supremacy in such a sophisticated way, in such a detailed way, where as a historian, you as a Nicantlaka historian, you kind of like are very skeptical, right? And you're put in this place because you are Nicantlaka and you're talking about your own people's history. So it's real complicated, especially when academia expects you to be objective. And usually the objective voice is the European voice. And so I thought it was really awesome the way he really unpacks his history. If you don't mind, I will actually read to you what I wrote as a review of Ned Blackhawk. It says, first of all, I forgot to tell you, this book was published in 2006. Yeah. Yale University History and American Studies professor Ned Blackhawk argues that although there has been a great focus and emphasis on exploring the various complexities in early America, the narrative has, quote, failed to gauge the violence, end quote, that unraveled throughout the beginnings of establishing the history of North America. This practice has led historians into presenting the history of America as an inevitable and natural fulfillment of destiny. He criticizes that after decades of rich historiography, the area of early American history continues to have a glaring absence, end quote, of Native American focused experience, and their various perspectives continue to take the back seat. By focusing on the Ute, Shoshone, Paiute, he is able to diversify the complicated and multidimensional view that long prevails in the general and simplistic understanding of the Indian. Rather than focusing on the victimization of Native Americans as the title may allude, Blackhawk emphasizes the particular history of Native Americans of the Great Basin, which he argues have been overlooked, and highlights the complexities found in the experiences of the Paiute, Shoshone, and Ute, and how they strategically worked with and against each other in order to maintain autonomy during the intense encounters in the late 17th century and 18th century. He also expands on the concept of violence and how it was used as a tool by all people in early American history as a way to demonstrate power, intimidate, and fight off competing imperialist groups. Natives of the Great Basin forged alliances with other native groups as well as with various imperial European settlers who all sought to gain economic benefit while maintaining peaceful alliances. The role that violence played in colonial America was key in creating and maintaining alliances. His approach to violence is not the expected Europeans committed violence against Native peoples, but rather also explores how Native Americans use violence as a way to reinforce and dismantle their own identities and alliances. He dedicates the beginning of 4 chapters, which were his dissertation, to the formations of colonial violence from the early Spanish settlements through the westward expansion. His final chapters deal with the complicated aftermath and finding strategic ways to adopt the incoming influx of European immigration and the expanding westward expansion and how U.S. expansion policies impacted the movements and diplomatic relations that arose among native groups and imperial forces. In his strongest and most groundbreaking research, which is chapter 7, he exposes the complex and vital encounters by the arrival of the Mormons into the Divine Land. The research further deepens our understanding of the religious and political implications of trade and settlement in the Great Basin area and how these opposing realities shaped political tensions. His attention to the Mormon-Shoshone conflict that came out after the Mexican-American War sheds light on how the Mormon anti-slavery view was utilized as a means of economic gain. Both groups of people tried to coexist as they each attempted to maintain trading relations with each other and becoming open enemies of the federal government. This brief era of coexistence was soon shattered due to the little-known Bear River Massacre in January of 1863. The Mormon presence contributed to even more violence, overlapped with pre-existing tensions among the Equestrian and non-Equestrian native groups. In addition to the constant political and social anxieties, and the impact of trying to establish trading networks with each other without creating conflict with the federal government forced these two groups to try to establish some type of peaceful diplomatic relation. Blackhawk also examines how other factors such as volunteer forces and the various ways that the U.S. government militarized Indians into participants in the various U.S. forces. Blackhawk comes full circle as he ends his book with the revisiting of the forgotten Bear River Massacre in January of 1863, which led to the killing of 300 Shoshone. The concept of violence and the destruction closes his monograph in a personal narrative that includes the impact of the detrimental effects of displacement, alcoholism, and violence on his particular family. So basically, I think that's another powerful example is that he at the very end connects the history of trauma and violence to his own family and to the experiences of many Native Americans that experience the same type of trauma through the end result of colonization, which is alcoholism, abuse, and this legacy of pain that comes from these very specific examples of violence that has been completely overlooked by historians in this era of early American history. So it's really important. And like I said, all the books that I'm going to be reviewing, I'm not saying they're perfect books by no means, but they have a lot of great information, great research. And what I always try to get from a book is the black and white, details, the black and white facts that you can try to paste together depending on what you're focusing on in your study. But Ned Blackhawk, being Nicanlaca himself, does an awesome job. And I really like the way he's very brave in the way that he discusses white supremacy in a way that, because I'm sure a lot of people were like, oh, he's another angry native or whatever. But he really complicates that, and he really brings receipts to the very end. And I would recommend this book. It's pretty lengthy. It's very, very, very dense. It has tons of information. But as far as the examples of violence and as far as placing Indigenous people as the number one priority in research, it's number one. So check it out. Ned Blackhawk, Violence Over the Land, Indians and Empires in the Early American West. This book was published in 2006, and the scholar is Ned Blackhawk. Check it out.